Well, that's weird. Wonder why they never told us this about Social Security. Huh. Very interesting. So we're going to read from, this is the what the hell is this book called again? I can't remember. It's from, let me get this, hold on a second, let me get organized. Oh boy. This is the book, Retirement Income Analysis from Bill Sharp. And that's the Sharp ratio and whatnot. So everyone knows Bill Sharp. He's a well-known guy in my business. And we're going to come down here. Hold on just a second. Come to the chapter 14, page 389 of 730, talk about Social Security. And before we do that, we're going to say something to you, something very important. WeBuyAnyCars.com. WeBuyAnyCars.com. I just got that song in my head because they play it on the news. I don't really watch them, and I get stuff all. Let's just eat some ice cream. My face is a mess. I'm just a big old mess. Messy Marvin. Give it to Mikey. He likes it. Mike likes that. He'll eat anything. Anyway, so we got right here. Here's old FDR. All right. Here's what he says. In the important field of security for our old age people, it seems necessary to adopt three principles. This is from FDR, sent to a message to Congress. All right. First, non-contributory old age pensions for those who are now too old to build up their own insurance. Non-contributory. What does that mean? That they did not put any money in. But we need to get them money so they don't have to go be broke, essentially. Non-contributory, i.e. they don't contribute anything, we're just going to give it to them. It is, of course, clear that for perhaps 30 years to come, funds will have to be provided by the states and the federal government to meet these pensions. Interesting. Funds will have to be provided from the states or the federal government to meet these pensions on non-contributory Social Security benefits. But Josh, Social Security has an explicit law that says it cannot give from the general fund. And there it is right there. FDR is saying that explicitly. That is for the next basically 30 years, it could be as much. Now, you could say, well, if that was in 1934, Social Security Administration, Social Security didn't come into law in 1935, but the intention, obviously, from FDR, who signed the legislation, was that it was okay to use the general fund to provide for Social Security recipients. I mean, he says it right there. It is, of course, clear that perhaps for 30 years to come, funds will have to be provided by the states and the federal government to meet these pensions, non-contributory old age pensions. Second, compulsory contributory annuities, Social Security, which in time will establish a self-supporting system for those now young and for future generations. All right, and that's kind of what we're under now, self-sufficient. Third, voluntary contributory annuities, which by individual initiative can increase the annual amounts received in old age. It is proposed that the federal government assume 1/2 the cost of the old age pension, which ought ultimately to be supplanted by self-supporting annuity plans. Ought to be. Doesn't mean it will, but ought to be. And by the way, voluntary contributed annuities by which individual initiative can increase the annual amounts one receives in old age. So for all these fools out there, say just get rid of the cap. FDR right there says you can make more Social Security money by initiative, i.e. making more money, taxable money for sure. So if you're going to get rid of the cap, you're not going to increase the Social Security benefit. You're now violating the initial construct of Social Security, according to FDR. Because all these people say, but FDR never intended it to be like this. I just read it to you right there. That's literally what he had written to Congress in 1934. He said explicitly, government money can be used from the general welfare fund, to finance Social Security benefits. He just said it explicitly. On top of that, he said, hey, you can have a bigger Social Security benefit with individual initiative, i.e. work more, pay more taxes into the system. Oh, by the way, it ought to be supplanted by self-supporting annuity plans. Doesn't say has to be, it said ought to be. So the whole point of what drives you crazy is like, we can't, Social Security is going bankrupt. Department of Defense is going bankrupt. NASA is going bankrupt. Everything's going bankrupt. Everything is. There's no money to fund all these things, and we don't have it. Social Security is just a drop in the bucket, man. I mean, it's a big drop, don't get me wrong, but still a drop, just another drop. Everything's going bankrupt relative to the federal budget. There is not enough to pay these things, and yet for some reason, no one ever talks about the Department of Defense not having enough money to pay all their bills. But for Social Security, it's weird. It's almost like they want you scared, isn't it? Even though FDR said it can come from the general fund, right there. How else can you look at that? August 14th, 1935, Congress passed the Social Security Act. I saw big old daddy long legs crawling around there. I love daddy long legs. Yeah, get them, boys, or get them, boy. An act to provide for the general welfare by establishing a system of federal old age benefits and by enabling the several states to make more adequate provision for aged persons, blind people, dependent and crippled people, maternal and child welfare, public health, and the administration of unemployment compensation laws to establish a Social Security board to raise revenue and for other purposes. I mean, there it is, man. I don't know what's, and there's FDR signing it right there, and all these. That's not, what's that her name? Is that Perkins, Frances Perkins? I bet it is, from the Department of Labor. But that's Frances Perkins. Who's that guy? That guy's, is that the guy from University of Wisconsin? I'm not sure. That might be the guy from GE. I don't know. Review, as I did in my book, you can retire on Social Security. Here's the taxes right there, 1,000 schmack, 1%, 1%. All right, look at that. Self-employed workers, nothing. It's just 1%. That's what the tax was, 1%. Rates for employees and employers, 1%. It wasn't one on both sides, it's 1%. All right, so we come down here, 6.2 for employees, employers, 6.2. Then we got health insurance, or the hospital insurance, which is Medicare. All right, so basically you got 1% to you as the employee, 1% to you as the employer. 1.5%. All right, so now what people forget is the Social Security taxes has increased from 1 to 6.2 on top of 1.45. So people say we're not saving enough. I said, well, we are saving a lot. We're saving a significant amount of money because we're putting in 12.4 for Social Security and another 2.9 for Medicare. That's real money. That's 15.3%. I'm self-employed. I pay both that. So I make $100,000. I'm putting $15,300 for Social Security and Medicare. Even if you're not self-employed, $15,300 is being put on your behalf. All these people say, oh, we're not saving enough. Well, 15% of your 100, basically all of it on Medicare, but your first was 160,000 or something like that on your wages is going to Social Security and Medicare. 15%. That's quite a lot of money that is being put in on your behalf. But we're not saving enough. It's stupid. But they never talk about it. They never talk about the increase in taxes. They just talk about how fewer people there are supporting you for Social Security recipients. So they say, hey, we have one worker for 3 workers or 4 workers for every recipient now. I say, yeah, but we also have a hugely more increase in taxation, 600% increase in taxation. That's just fact. Also, it's funny. So not only have we increased our taxation by 600%, and again, that's just on Social Security. It's actually 620%. And then we add another 1.45 for a Medicare tax. But watch this. So back when Social Security first came out, right here, WeBuyAnyCars.com. $3,000 is your maximum taxable earnings. All right, now it's $160,000, I think. $3,000, 1937 and 1950. So let's take a look. What $3,000? What would the equivalent today? $3,000 would be the maximum taxable earnings. The equivalent today would be $69,000, according to BLS CPI inflation. Isn't that weird? We've increased the maximum taxable earnings significantly higher than the rate of inflation. You can see right here, CPI inflation calculated directly from the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, who calculates inflation. If I made $3,000 in 1935, actually it was 1937 to be honest with you, that's what that showed. If I made $3,000 in 1937, that the maximum taxable wages today should be $66,000 if it adjusted for inflation. But it did much more than adjust for inflation because now the maximum taxable wages is what? It's $167,000 or something like that. So we've increased the maximum taxable wages. Not only have we increased the taxes by 620%, we've increased the maximum taxable wages by literally $100,000 over what it should be if we just follow for inflation. Yeah, it's weird. No one talks about that stuff. They always say, oh, there's not enough workers, blah, blah. They never talk about the increase in taxation. They never talk about the increase in max taxable earnings. And they never talk about what FDR said that can come from the general welfare. It's just, it's the weirdest thing. All right, the Social Security is not going anywhere. It's going to be there 100%. I would not stress this at all. But if you want to, that's fine. You should. I find many other things to stress about. Nuclear bombs from Putin. If you want to stress about that, you shouldn't. That's silly, but whatever. I think you can stress a lot of other stuff about, but that's not it. And Social Security certainly isn't either. All right, love your thoughts. God bless. We'll see ya.